The final element of poetry that we need to talk about is speaker, and we leave this to the very end because it's the last thing you should really look at. You need to analyze the other four elements before you can really understand who and what the speaker is. So the speaker is, just like sound, the voice. It's a voice that relates the story or idea. It could be a character or a narrator that's created by the poet. And in this type of a poem, you're looking at a poem that's more of a story. It's telling sequence of events maybe, or describing from the perspective of somebody other than maybe the adult poet that's writing it, or the student poet. It could also be the poet himself, and I usually think of poems that describe feelings or scenes, things in nature, are usually just a person kind of reflecting on what's around them or what they're thinking or feeling. And so when we look at the speaker, and after we've analyzed the other four elements, we want to understand why the poet wrote the poem in the first place, the why. And just like in any literature, we look for a theme. What was the meaning, the reason, the lesson that we learn from looking at this poem? So let's take a second and look at the poem Treehouse by Shel Silverstein. As I read you this poem, I want you to think about who would be writing something like this. Whose perspective is this poem being told from? A tree house, a free house, a secret you and me house, a high up in the leafy branches, cozy as can be house, a street house, a neat house, be sure and wipe your feet house, is not my kind of house at all. Let's go live in a tree house. Now first I want to think about who's telling this poem. Is it actually Shel Silverstein, who I know of as an adult poet, or is Shel creating the perspective of a character? And from what I can understand, or from what I get from this poem, I think he's creating a child. He's creating the voice of a child who, it sounds like, in his home has to always be very neat, might be getting yelled at a lot for not for tracking mud in the house, for not hanging his stuff up, which is probably something we could all relate to. His place, his ideal place, is being outside in a tree house where you don't have any rules. So when we look at the voice of the poem, it sounds like a character created by Shel Silverstein. And what do you think he's trying to say? The why. Why does he write a poem? He's an adult. Why would he write a poem about a tree house? And as I think about it now from the perspective of a parent who's always nagging my children about things like that, wiping their feet, hanging up your backpack, not leaving your shoes in the walkway, it makes me also stop and think, well, I need to also remember that kids are kids. And maybe that's what Shel Silverstein wants us to remember, is that kids are always kids, and they need a little bit of freedom. Now, when I think about theme or voice in a poem, it doesn't always mean that I'm going to find an exact answer. Whatever you do pick, though, you've got to have some kind of evidence from the story that's going to support your reasoning. And when I think of the way that this poem is written, it starts off from a kid's perspective about being free, and then it changes to what rules are like within his house. I have some reasoning to back up why I think that. Okay? So, just to recap, we're going to go through all 5 of these elements every time we look at a poem. And we're going to find that some poems might emphasize sound a little bit more, while another poem might emphasize form. We are not going to necessarily have a poem that has all 5 elements all the time, but sometimes we will. And so as we go through analyzing poems in the next few weeks, I want you to make sure that you get your notes out and you use the notes, the terminology that we're talking about here to go through understanding them.